Okay, ready to jump into some seriously spooky history.
Yeah.
Because today, we're heading down to Louisiana. A state just packed with culture, amazing history, and, well, it's got this big reputation for hauntings, especially New Orleans.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's one of those places where the past feels, I don't know, really close somehow. So for this deep dive, we've kind of gathered stuff from various sources, mostly those online lists, highlighting the really famous haunted spots. Our material focuses on 5 specific places in Louisiana, the ones known for having like really intense stories.
Right. And our mission is basically to walk you through what these sources say, pull out the main details, and figure out why these places keep popping up, what makes them so legendary in Louisiana's whole paranormal scene. Let's see what the material actually tells us.
All right, let's kick off with one you almost always see, the LaLaurie Mansion in New
Oh,
Orleans.
yeah, that one's unavoidable, isn't it? The source is connected to some really um, horrific stuff, right?
Absolutely. The material's really clear its awful reputation comes from the owner, Delphine LaLaurie. Sources talk about this discovery back in 1834, finding out she was, well, torturing enslaved people horribly inside the house. It's just a terrible part of the city's history.
And the hauntings people report, according to the sources, they link right back to that.
Exactly. The sources pretty much all report hauntings connected to the victims. You see claims about hearing screams, the sound of chains, apparitions described as suffering. The material suggests it's the spirits of those enslaved people who are still there. It's a really powerful, tragic connection the sources make again and again.
That direct line from the history to the reported haunting, that really stands out in the material. Okay, so moving from a private home with that kind of weight, let's shift to another historical site, a plantation this time.
Right.
What about Myrtles Plantation? What did the sources say?
Right, Myrtles. It's near St. Francisville, goes way back to 1796. Our sources mention it's famous for stories of 10 murders happening there, though they also note only one murder is actually historically confirmed. Kind of shows how legend can sort of balloon beyond the documented facts sometimes.
And the most famous story, the one the sources always seem to mention, is about Chloe.
That's the one, Chloe.
Yeah.
Often described as an enslaved person who was punished, supposedly for eavesdropping. The details vary a bit in the sources we looked at, but the core story is her spirit's still around.
Okay. And besides Chloe, any other specifics?
Yeah, the material mentions other things too, like kids seen playing in mirrors, and that one famous photo, the one with the figure, supposedly a woman in a green turban. Some sources say that shows up in pictures, and people often think it's Chloe. It shows how these specific visuals and characters kind of become central to the whole haunting narrative.
Gotcha. Okay, let's head back to New Orleans, but a different kind of spot, St. Louis Cemetery #1. Old cemeteries, always prime ghost story territory.
For sure. It was established way back in 1789. It's the oldest one in the city. And the sources covering the hauntings there, they really, really focus on one incredibly famous person.
Has to be Marie Laveau, the voodoo priestess.
Exactly. The sources overwhelmingly point to her as the main spirit haunting the cemetery. Her tomb is like a huge focal point, and the material talks about people leaving offerings, reporting seeing her, sometimes even dreaming about her.
It's interesting looking at the sources, how a really powerful, documented historical figure like Laveau becomes the ghost story for that place. It's different than, say, the unnamed victims at LaLaurie Mansion.
It totally is. It shows how different kinds of historical connections shape the hauntings people report. Okay, next, let's talk Hotel Monteleone, another New Orleans landmark that pops up in our sources.
Right, the haunted hotel, the classic. But what makes this one stand out in the list based on the material?
Well, it's historic, family run since 1886. The sources mention reports about haunted elevators, taking people to the wrong floor, and even descriptions of entire phantom floors that supposedly appear and then just vanish.
Whoa. Do the sources name any specific ghosts there?
Yeah, there's one that comes up a lot in the material, a young boy, Maurice. The story goes that he died in the hotel and is still looking for his parents. It's a sad story, one you kind of see variations of in hotel ghost lore sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Adds that specific bit of tragedy, doesn't it? Okay, last one. The Old Absinthe House. Sounds like a place with history and maybe different kinds of spirits.
Huh. Yeah, maybe. Built in 1807, the sources describe it as this famous hangout for all sorts of historical characters, pirates, duelists, soldiers. A real mix, the hauntings mentioned. Things like smelling cigar smoke when no one's smoking, hearing laughter, and interestingly, Andrew Jackson's spirit is often named as one of the ghosts there.
Andrew Jackson. Wow. That's a pretty major historical figure to be haunting a bar. It really highlights how all these places, homes, plantations, cemeteries, bars, weave specific bits of history and famous people into their ghost stories, at least according to the sources we looked at.
They absolutely do. So, yeah, we've done a quick run through of some of Louisiana's most famous haunted locations, focusing on the backstories and phenomena highlighted in our source material, from the tragic echoes at LaLaurie and Myrtles to the big historical names at the cemetery and the Absinthe House and that sad little boy at the Monteleone.
It definitely makes you wonder why these particular spots, these stories, grab people's imaginations so much, showing up again and again in sources like these lists.
Well, maybe it's how the actual weight of history, especially the really tragic stuff or events involving famous people, provides such a strong sort of narrative backbone for the paranormal claims.
Right. And that kind of brings us to a really interesting question to leave you with, something that builds on everything we've just talked about from the material. Given how deeply rooted and often painful the history is in so many of these places, involving suffering, injustice, or just really notable figures, how much do those very real echoes of the past actually create or at least shape the specific ghost stories that get told about them? Something to chew on.